everyone, and welcome. It's excellent to be here today with Rishi Khosla and Munish Verma. Rishi is the co-founder and CEO of OakNorth Holdings, a multi-billion-dollar fintech firm focusing on unlocking the potential in customized lending to SMEs globally. Prior to this role, Rishi was the co-founder and chairman of Cockbell Amber, a financial research firm, and he's also an early-stage investor in several businesses, including PayPal and Indiabulls. Welcome, Rishi.
Thank you.
I'm also joined by Munish, a partner at SoftBank Investment Advisors UK Limited, based in London. He focuses on Asia and the EMEA region, and prior to this, Munish was global head of structured lending and special situations at Nomura International PLC and head of global markets India for Deutsche Bank. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you both for joining me here. It's a great pleasure to be talking to you at FinTech Week in one of the greatest cities in the world for FinTech. And off stage, we were talking, Munish described Rishi as a poster child for FinTech. So this is really
half in jest.
two major success stories of the sector. The UK FinTech sector contributes about £7 billion annually to the UK economy and employs over 75,000 people across approximately 1,600 companies. Companies such as OakNorth and investors such as SoftBank Vision Fund are continuing to showcase British innovation on a global scale. And in today's discussion, we're going to talk a bit about what makes a truly successful global FinTech company. So let's start by hearing a bit more about the Vision Fund and OakNorth. Munish, the SoftBank has got a lot of attention recently for the Vision Fund and the investments you've been making. Can you tell us a bit about the transition from telco to international tech investor?
Sure.
And the founding principles of the Vision Fund?
Sure, absolutely. So look, the Vision Fund was set up just under 2 years ago. The first closing of the fund was May 2017, so we're just coming up to a 2-year anniversary. And what were the reasons why we set the Vision Fund up, right? If you look at what's happened in the world of tech, a couple of fundamental things have occurred. One, and I think speakers before us alluded to this point as well, data has become very prevalent, right? And I think Mark mentioned that there was more data generated in 2018 than all of history put together. So there's been a massive proliferation of data. And then with the advent of sort of cloud computing and the ease of technology to process that data and the cost of processing the data also has come down dramatically. And you couple that with the fact, with the rise of artificial intelligence, machine learning, our ability to make sense of that data and to sort of glean analysis from the data has also increased exponentially. So massive amounts of data, easy to sort of compute, there's enough computing capacity in the world, cheap to compute, and then AI machine learning helping us make sense of that. That's one aspect. Secondly, if you look at companies now, last few years, companies have been staying private for much longer before they actually go to public markets for capital. So private for much longer, but that doesn't mean that the capital needs have come down. In fact, capital needs in today's world are much greater because companies have to scale up much faster and go global much faster, right, for which you need more capital. So the confluence of sort of these two trends was that you needed somebody that had large amounts of capital, but that was patient long-term capital, which is what the Vision Fund is. The fund was set up, we want to take advantage of these trends in the world where companies to scale up need capital. There's lots of data that's fundamentally reshaping different industries, and the Vision Fund has long-dated, patient, and large amounts of capital. That's the genesis, how we moved away from SoftBank, which was, and still is, a telecom business in different parts of the world, but has also set up the Vision Fund, which it manages.
Great, thank you. And Rishi, OakNorth's success has been largely driven by its IP, and in particular its machine learning platform, OakNorth Analytical Intelligence, which is being licensed to banks in other markets. Can you tell us a little bit about the benefits to banks from using this platform?
Sure. I think just picking up on what Munish said, if you actually have a look at availability of data today and you compare it to where it was 10, 15 years ago in terms of how easy it is to access the data and also the volumes of data which are available, that just creates a totally different environment to be able actually to conduct credit analysis, which is obviously at the core of what we do in terms of lending to SMEs. So with the availability of the increased data sets, our ability to actually apply that to take what is an institutional level of sort of credit underwriting applied to smaller businesses effectively and efficiently is fundamentally what our platform's about. And the choice in terms of taking that platform and licensing it to banks outside the UK was just a very clear awareness from our side in terms of how to actually efficiently scale the business across different markets whilst attacking the fundamental problem which we're focused on, which is unlocking credit for SMEs.
So obviously it's been, should we say, pretty successful so far. OakNorth currently ranks as the most highly valued fintech company in Europe. But earlier this year, you were quoted as saying that your $2.8 billion valuation was modest. So can you tell us a bit about the scale of your ambition?
Sure, I'll first say it was modest because Manish negotiated us down way too hard. He's a very tough negotiator, by the way.
I don't believe that. He's a tough negotiator.
So look, when you look at the overall scale of our ambition, the market which we're playing into, current loan stock is circa 7 trillion globally. Our view is that market is underserved. So that number 7 trillion is actually a number from a constrained market rather than from a market which has sort of liberal supply of credit. So that's number one. Number two, you look at players within the financial services industry. I mean, you take something like JP Morgan Chase, I don't know, market cap 370 billion or something like that, right? So you look at where we're starting for where we are today. I think it's a low valuation or modest valuation, but that's because of his negotiation. But if you put that aside, if you look at the scale of the ambition is to actually create something which is significantly larger. So we view ourselves very much as in the first chapter of the story rather than having been a success.
Okay, thank you. So, Munish, the Vision Fund strategy has been described as removing the constraints of capital, but you're also known for plugging in the whole network's business knowledge into those companies. So given the scale of the investments, do you think you could be seen to be anointing winners in specific subsectors?
So I think, look, what we bring to the table, capital clearly you mentioned is one, right? But that's not the only thing. We also bring our international ecosystem of other portfolio companies that we've invested in. So the first point to make is that we've got investments in roughly 70 portfolio companies around the world. And all of these companies are leaders in their own field. So when we invest in another portfolio company, we bring two things: capital plus access to this entire international ecosystem, which is super beneficial. In terms of having outcomes, right? Yes, you can make the case that given our size, we do have the ability to catalyze certain outcomes in certain sectors, right? But that's not the primary goal. The primary goal is we look for businesses, and Rishi's business is prime case in point. We look for businesses that are addressing very significant pain points. And those pain points could be for consumers in our everyday life, or it could be for SMEs, as OakNorth is doing, where the capacity or the constraint on capital is pretty real. So businesses that are addressing markets that are massive, that have big target addressable markets with a product that clearly satisfies a need. So that's what we look at when we invest, right? Now, once we've made that investment, we also have a view as to how can this investment help our overall ecosystem, and how can our overall ecosystem help this particular investment. Multiple cases in point, and then as a consequence of these two or three factors, if we're able to catalyze an outcome, so be it.
So building on that, you're obviously invested in a large number of companies globally, from WeWork to Uber. What was it that appealed about OakNorth in particular that made this your first foray into European fintech?
So three things, right? Much like every investment. One, the quality of the management team. And if you've spent, and I've had the privilege and Joe spending a lot of time with Rishi and his management team, phenomenal world-class entrepreneurs. So we are looking for founding teams and entrepreneurs that are ambitious, share our vision for the future, and have the energy and stamina to actually execute a very bold, ambitious plan, right? That's one. Second thing is that the market that they're serving, and again, the total loan stock for SMEs in the world in a credit-constrained market is 7 trillion. So the market that Rishi is trying to serve and OakNorth is trying to serve is massive. So if he gets it right, this is a phenomenal opportunity, and he's right, that this valuation is a starting point. Our expectations of this business are there's going to be many multiples of this. And the third thing, of course, is at the time at which we invest. So we are not early-stage investors. We are not VCs. We come in, we are late-stage growth capital. So at the time at which we invest, we take a look as to what the product has done. Is the product capable of real scale? And is at a point where it can start scaling, where our capital can then be used to scale that product much faster, take it into more geographies, or expand into adjacent products. So those are the three factors that we really liked about OakNorth, and that turned out to be our first sort of foray into European fintech.
Okay, so much for the reason for investment into OakNorth. Rishi, from your point of view, prior to the Vision Fund investment, you had already attracted several $100 million of investment from other global investors, including GIC. So what was it about Vision Fund in particular that appealed to you?
I mean, look, the Vision Fund, clearly, I mean, going back to what Manish said, the ecosystem which SoftBank has is very significant. And I think the relationships on a global basis that they have is very relevant for us with other banks around the world. And clearly, as that's our strategy to actually roll out the business internationally, there's a very good fit there. I think also the whole concept of thinking big, right? I remember one of the early meetings I had with Manish and his colleague Rajiv. It was basically saying, okay, take your business plan, how can you multiply it several times over? That thinking sort of got me ahead finally of where SoftBank think in terms of the potential size of this investment. So now I'm pushing the other way. But just the ability to actually take all the constraints off and say just how big can this be if you take in an unconstrained world, a capital unconstrained. I think it just gave me a whole fresh way of looking at the opportunity and the size of the opportunity. And as I said, I think I've sort of run away with that view.
Thank you. Munish, OakNorth is quite unique as a fintech company in that it's managed to turn a profit very quickly, over 10 million in 2017, only its second full year of operations, and now nearly 34 million pounds in 2018. How important is the timing of when fintech companies turn a profit from your point of view as an investor?
So I'm not too focused on when a company turns a profit, right? The way we look at businesses and investments in companies is that does the business model make sense? And to prove the sort of validity of a business model, I don't think you need to show a profit at the bottom line. What you do need to show at some point when you have a certain amount of scale, which Rishi's business clearly does, is that on a unit margin basis, on a unit of goods sold, product sold, is there a contribution margin that's positive, right? Beyond that, if you think that you're building a platform that has massive network effects and you want to attract, the more consumers you attract to your platform, the better the power of the platform, the greater the network effect. And for that, you delay profitability for a few years out because you're spending money to attract more consumers on your platform. I think that's perfectly fine. As long as there's a path to profitability that we understand and is well flagged and we understand the milestones along the way, to have short-term profitability, I don't think is a good driver or indicator of how successful a business would be in the long term. And in Rishi's case, I think he's done a phenomenal job of having short-term profitability as well without compromising on increasing the scale. But I don't think it's necessarily a good thing for companies that are scaling rapidly, can scale rapidly, to focus on having a short-term profit on their books as opposed to attracting more consumers, building a better moat, and building a stronger network effect.
Okay, great. Probably good news for many listening. Rishi, I want to ask you about diversity. Charlotte mentioned at the start, this is not a sector which has traditionally been very diverse. Mm-hmm. Do you see a path to more diversity in the sector, and how important do you think diversity is in being a successful fintech company?
So look, the first thing to say is that I have sort of diversity, I think, comes in multiple forms, right? My business partner is a Colombian Jew. I'm an Indian Brit, which you can say isn't overly diverse. You look at it as an organization. I think we're very open and we score well on LGBT, on ethnic diversity, on gender diversity. And our approach is very much to have the best person for a job, almost irrespective of preferences, ethnicity or gender. I do think if you home in on gender, and I think that the remarks earlier were very, in my mind, very specific around gender, I do think there are a significant lack of ladies women in finance and technology. And because of that, we're doing a lot of work with schools around, girls' schools specifically, around actually promoting STEM education within girls' schools and also promoting entrepreneurship within that. And for us, that's our way of trying to, I guess, increase the pipeline of individuals who actually want to go into STEM and into more entrepreneurial ventures. So I agree that's a long-tail solution, but I feel like solving the problem at source is always a good thing, right? As I say, we always believe when we're recruiting, we'll take the best person for a role, but we're not going to specifically say that we want someone who's from the LGBT community or someone who's a female, etc.
Okay, thank you. Munish, we've got a room full of fintechs here, dying to hear from you. How should they get on your radar?
In terms of? Send me an email.
Attracting anyone.
Send me an email.
Okay, well, wow.
Send me an email, absolutely. But the fundamental thing is, as I said, three things, right? Founding team, target addressable market, how big that is, and then is the product that you've got, is it ready to scale, is it scalable, and is it at that point where our capital can really help it scale? Those are the three fundamental things that we look at every investment. Goes without saying that we are looking for the technology component of whatever investment we make, that how tech-enabled is it, and is it fundamentally making a difference to our daily lives? Is it fundamentally solving a pain point for SMEs, consumers, businesses in a tech-enabled manner? That's key.
Great, thank you. And Rishi, final question. What's your one piece of advice to fintechs in the room who want to be hugely successful?
Look, I think my one consistent piece for any entrepreneur, not necessarily specifically in fintech, is build a company as if you're going to own it for life, because you'll make all the right long-term decisions and none of the wrong short-term decisions.
Great, thank you. Well, I think the theme of the panel has been thinking big. You heard it here first. Please join me in thanking Rishi and Munish. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.